Good evening, my dark minions. Welcome to Lady of Darkness Horror Podcast. It's been quite some time that I've welcomed you to my dark universe. I must say that it's been quite hectic on my end. So for this special day of my return, I have an extra long tale for you, and it is a tad bit more creepier and disturbing than usual. Before we dive right into that, I would like to send out a special and huge thank you to my budding audience who keep this YouTube channel and horror podcast going. And now on with today's tale that is simply called Obsession. You've seen cases like this before. You've handled cases before when a failing relationship would deteriorate. You'd seen how exes would become enemies to one another, and how the nasty exchange of bitterness between the two would always end in a court-child custody battle. But this case, however, wasn't the same. This was a case that would haunt and plague your nightmares. You had been warned about the severity of this case, but you didn't necessarily know just how notorious it would be. But nothing would prepare your mind for what you were about to see today. As a highly respected, successful attorney of King County, you're famously known to tackle some of the most destructive cases. You are, however, a highly respected, successful attorney, and it is simply your job to tackle these atrocious cases. You check into the King County Correctional Facility. The receptionist recognizes you instantly with a warm and friendly, "Hello, Mrs. Brooks." You as well return her a smile and a greet. The warden holds the huge double doors, and you suddenly feel uneasy. The kind of uneasiness that fills you with immediate fear and those familiar goosebumps swallowing up your body, and your hairs stand up on the back of your neck. You've been hearing these nasty rumors and speculations for days now, and hearing them has started to wear on you. The perpetrator is, of course, 18. He's not a minor anymore and legally can be tried as an adult with the most brutal sentence. This young man, this fragile, young, brunette man with eyes so ice cold that they almost appear black due to their void of warmth. Your uneasiness intensifies as you stare intently as he is being led in by the wardens with his hands and wrists shackled in manacles. He now has a reputation that even you don't like. "Hello," you say as you take your seat. This young man only stares warmly back at you, as if he has nothing to hide, nothing to own up to. For a split second, you are somehow convinced it is so, until your mind takes you back to those ugly crime scene photos, and then suddenly, you are not convinced. Sitting before you is a cold-hearted, dangerous killer. But that is beyond the point here. One of the wardens look at you, then begin to talk. "Mrs. Brooks, we will be leaving now, but we will be watching this interview, all right?" "Sure, of course. Thank you." You suddenly feel fear rising up within you again, as your mind fully contemplates the actual idea that you are now in a room with a well-known, dangerous inmate. Alone in a room with the disreputable Wyatt Hotchkiss. Something about watching the warden close the door behind them filled you with that insecurity again, of bare exposure to danger. You keep telling yourself that your sole source of security, and it's guaranteed that you're safe. But something tells you otherwise and you're unsure of yourself. You know you have no real logical reasons to feel like this. You watched with your own eyes when the warden shackled the man to the interviewing table. So, I'm Linda Brooks. Your uncle hired me to be your attorney for the nearing trial. How has it been here for you? You are met with a warm smile, but with the eyes of a complete sociopath in silence. Can I get you something? Maybe something to drink? Wyatt just shakes his head and remains silent. All right, shall we start then? Do you mind telling me what happened? You ask as you prepare your notepad and ink pen. I don't want to discuss this right now, ma'am. I hope you can understand that. You've dealt with clients like this before in the past. You gaze intently at Wyatt Hotchkiss, and you are only left with a pervading question of how a young man could have it within him to commit one of the most disturbing crimes. You gaze at him and think back to your own high school years and after graduation. People like Wyatt Hotchkiss wasn't supposed to end up like this. Not going to prison before his life started. Wasted youth had always been one of your pet peeves, your weakness. People his age by now should have already been heading off to college and making plans for the future, such as opportunities of life's bliss when meeting your husband or wife and starting your own family. How about we start with your parents? How is your relationship with them? I know it was your uncle who was the one who hired me, but how was your relationship with them? Am I at least correct that your mother and father are traveling missionaries? They own the Hotchkiss Assembly of God Church. Wyatt nods slowly, but his bright blue eyes stay focused on you. I won't judge you. I'm here to help you and to help you plead your case. You can talk to me. You can trust me. That's correct, ma'am. My parents own the Hotchkiss Church. Do you not like church? No. You are taken aback by his abrupt, quick response. They're the reason for all of this happening and the townspeople finding out. My uncle, he's been the only person who has supported my lifestyle and who I am, ma'am. And I love him for that. You suddenly feel confused, but you could swear up and down that you see a wrinkle appear on Wyatt's temple to indicate anger. What do you mean? What reason, Wyatt? What did your parents do? What were they responsible for? The room becomes eerily quiet, and you can see his eyes darting back and forth, looking at nothing. You could tell he had been feeling utterly ashamed about something. Let's talk about Cole Nixon. Is this him? Shuffling through your briefcase, you sigh in irritation at the unorganized mess. You know that you are far more organized and professional than this. You pull out a photograph of a boy, then offer it to Wyatt. He happily accepts, and his face lights up in exhilaration in a way that you've never seen it do before since your arrival for the interview. The boy in the photograph is that of a handsome boy with sandy blonde hair, with the golden eyes of honey and the figure of an Abercrombie model. Yes, that's him. What was it like going to high school with him? Did he ever bully you in any kind of way? Was Cole Nixon ever cruel to you in any kind of way, Wyatt? Wyatt nods lazily as his eyes still scan the picture before he passes it back to you. He was alright, I guess. Everybody at school liked him. He was quite popular and had lots of friends. He was never cruel in any type of way to me, but word got around the school after this rumor got out at my mother and father's church. The kids there, they were just all so cruel to me. They teased me for weeks and weeks until I just couldn't take anymore. It was to the point that there had been days I just skipped school altogether. Tell me about those rumors that started at your church, then somehow got out at your school, you asked, concerned. By now, you had been feeling very uncomfortable about where the conversation was headed. My parents, they confronted Cole's parents one night during a Wednesday evening church revival. They blamed him for everything, ma'am. And it wasn't his fault. It was my parents' fault. You see, You suddenly see a sudden transformation in Wyatt's now saddened face. They what? I need you to be completely honest with me about everything. Wyatt, I need your complete honesty if there's a fighting chance that you win this case. What did your parents do? You ask impatiently as you still study the disturbing but saddened look on his face. It is a mixture of both now, a mixture of sadness and anger. My parents found the letter I had been hiding from them, because I knew they'd freak if they found out. They blamed Cole about it all and said he was a bad influence over me. Then confronted his parents. Sometime after that, the Nixons stopped attending the church. That's when word got out around the school. I guess you could say I sort of had feelings back in high school about him. I just didn't acknowledge it. I thought if I suppressed these feelings, they'd just go away. But they didn't. They only got worse. Tell me about the kids at school. How did they treat you at school? How about you tell me about Allison Kelly? I understand she was a part of the cheerleading team and she treated you quite horribly. Did she bully you, Wyatt? Wyatt shrugs lightly, but you can't read his facial expressions anymore. The whole school did after they found out that I had a crush on Cole Nixon. He was the school's popular boy, but Allison Kelly was the worst. I see. Tell me about the incident at school that day when you ran home from school crying. Allison Kelly came up to you while in front of the whole school, then kissed you and slid your hand under her bra. Tell me about that. Wyatt had now somehow appeared innocent, like a kicked puppy who had been betrayed again and again by its owner. She told me she wanted to put a queer in check. She told me that she was going to show me what it felt like to be with a real woman. But I couldn't, ma'am. I didn't feel anything. I know I was supposed to, but I didn't. As a boy, it would have only been natural to feel something, but I didn't. I wasn't feeling turned on or anything. I just felt nothing. And at this point, this is where you discovered your romantic feelings for Cole Nixon. Wyatt nods. Yes, ma'am. No one but my uncle would understand. He was disowned by his family. too, over 20 years ago, because they disapprove of his homosexual lifestyle. He was shunned years ago and went to live in New York. My parents refused to pay for a lawyer for me, and when he heard about what happened, he hired you. It is now that you delve right back into that question before, and it all makes sense now. Let's talk about your relationship with Cole Nixon. How did things between you two start, and what did you do to him? Wyatt clears his throat. Cole hated me for a long time. He blamed me for what happened between my parents and his parents that night at the church. But I still had these feelings about him. They weren't going anywhere. They weren't going away, ma'am. I couldn't fight them, and I was completely sure Cole liked women. But he didn't. I found out he was bisexual. This was something he had hidden during his high school years because he knew it brings shame to his family's name. And he couldn't have that. So he hid it. It wasn't until after graduation, when we had been both 18, when we would confess these feelings for each other. I guess after all these years, I was surprised and even happy he noticed me. I waited for so long to see this day. I loved him. I really did, ma'am. We started dating each other shortly after we ran into each other at a local bar. You sigh. Tell me about your parents. What about my parents? How is your relationship with them now? Wyatt hesitates and nods slowly. We don't talk much, he finally admits. I cannot help you if you don't be completely honest with me. Tell me the truth about your parents. Did they disown you? Wyatt hesitated, the shame rising up within him. I would always tell Cole to come over to my place every Thursday when I knew I'd be home alone. I had to see him. I needed to see him. He would come over and we'd... Wyatt could barely finish his sentence. We'd do it at my house every Thursday when my parents would be gone. My parents once told me how they had a disdain for people who have different views, who love differently. You suddenly shudder, then cut Wyatt off, confused at this statement. Love differently? You ask. Wyatt nods. Yes, love differently, ma'am. It's a softer term to describe queers and lesbians. I wanted to spite the bitches for everything that they did to me over the years, so we would often do it in their bed, in their room. Tell me about that day your father caught you, the day they disowned you. One of the most devious smirks formed across Wyatt's face, and a sheer stream of rage filled your boiling blood. You felt nothing but enraged by this. You wanted to so badly slap that stupid smirk off of Wyatt's face. Wyatt let out a light smile. The day they disowned me, one of the best fucking days of my life. My father caught me. Us in the act, in their bed, in their room. That was supposed to be the place they made love. But I instead made it about me, my passion. At last, I was finally able to spite them hard by committing one of the most ultimate sins, adultery. What happened after your sexual affair with Cole Nixon had been discovered by your parents? Wyatt still had that devious smirk on his prideful face. Well, he wasn't happy. I was disowned and they kicked me out. I went to stay with some friends afterwards. Cole and I both did. I found out his family was upset with him, but they'd later forgiven him. The relationship lasted for a little over a year until something happened. Cole started to change. His visits and calls became fewer and fewer. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I was losing him. Tell me about the night you kidnapped Cole. How did you kidnap him? Wyatt is quiet for a little while. He broke my heart. After all that time together, Cole told me it was over. He started saying he felt tied down and wanted to see other people. He was seeing somebody. He was seeing Allison Kelly. And that is when you started to plot his demise, isn't it? It was when Cole told you the relationship was over between you and him, that you lost it. Wyatt swiftly shakes his head. I couldn't lose Cole. When I saw him with her, I completely lost it. I knew Cole at this point was bi, but seeing him with her hit differently. She betrayed me and I suffered because of her so long and so much. For the longest, it was disgusting and unbelievable that he'd go and be with her. I never wanted to hurt Cole, ma'am. I didn't want to hurt him. I didn't want to lose him. But he made me so angry. He kept telling me to go away. But I wouldn't. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to lose him. Allison had already told authorities how you'd harass Cole for weeks, how you'd leave voice messages on his cell phone. She said how you'd do this for days and days. You never meant for your voice to come out so afraid, so submissive. By this time, I knew I wasn't going to be able to lure him to the family's private property. There was just no fucking way. Cole was smarter than that. That's when I decided to... Wyatt paused and you could see the other shame rising up within him again. What did you do to him? You asked, almost nervous to hear his response. It had been clear you had been talking to a complete madman, and all senses of hearing any rationale had gone. So I decided to wait. He was working a night shift that night. I watched him for hours that day before nightfall. God, he was lovely. I waited for him to walk to his car that night. It had been dark, and I had been alone in this empty parking lot. Cole finally completed his shift, and I watched as he walked to his car while he had been on the phone with someone. He had been talking to her. He had been talking to Allison Kelly. I heard him laughing and confessing his love to her. I had remembered everything when seeing them together. How she had hurt me and made my life a living hell in high school. And I wanted revenge. I waited for him to get off the phone that night, and I hit him over the head until he fell unconscious. The room becomes quiet. Nothing can be heard but the constant humming of the air conditioner. What did you do to Cole after you knocked him unconscious that night? I took him to my family's private property, to an old cottage. I tied him to an old table and I left him like that for hours after he had woken up. He begged for me to let him go, but I wouldn't. I wanted to feel forever connected. You suddenly feel an uneasy sensation rising up within your stomach, and you have an urgent need to vomit, and you're almost afraid to ask, but you know it's a necessity that must be done. Connected? What do you mean you wanted to feel connected? You asked nervously. I wanted to punish him for the pain he caused me. I would torture him when he'd misbehave. Every so often he'd call me horrible names and insult me, and I'd always punish him. I would use the scalpel to cut him. Then I would pour lemon juice on the cuts. Of course, he'd shriek in pain and beg for me to stop, but I didn't stop. His begging became a sound I liked to hear. All that power that I had over him, I fucking loved it. For days, Cole fell at me, just begging and begging me to spare him. I'd offer him food and water, but only if he had been good to me. I would give him a few kisses on the neck, something I knew he always loved. He just continued to beg and fell at my feet and did what I told him to do. But then there would be times he wasn't so nice. Then he'd spew hateful things to me again. I would sometimes just hit him over retaliation, ma'am. I would hit him hard repeatedly sometimes just to see him shriek in pain and to be at my mercy. I wanted him dependent on me. I wanted him dependent on me for these things, ma'am. But I felt I had enough of him. He betrayed me and he wasn't worth having around anymore, so I finished him. Wyatt, I need you to tell me what you did. What did you do? What do you mean you wanted to feel connected? I need you to start talking to me and stop wasting my time. I'm sorry about Cole. He may have been a jerk, but I made sure a part of him would stay with me forever. Wyatt gloats blissfully. In all of the years of your career as an attorney, you've never wanted so badly to hit one of your clients. Enough! It's true, ma'am. I tried so hard to make that relationship work and keep us together, but Cole wouldn't allow it. He was just like everyone else, and I hated him for it. He was a backstabber just like all of the rest of them, just like everyone I've ever known. So I took my scalpel and started to slice through his chest while he was still alive. It was pitiful to see him in that state, actually. He screamed in pain, and I remember seeing so much blood. That's how Cole Nixon quit existing that day. What did you mean about being connected to him? Tell me. Wyatt grinned, and that same cold gaze stared back at you. In this moment, you had been glad this criminal had been restrained. It was your only defense. There was no other way to be connected forever, so I consumed his heart. Don't you get it? His heart was mine. It was always mine. It belonged to me. Sometimes I felt like the heart wasn't enough, though. There were so many parts of the body I could have kept. Enough! I don't want to listen to any more of this. The head would have made a perfect piece. It could have been like my own mannequin version of him that I could have woken up to every morning. I don't want to hear any more of this. Be quiet. Wyatt smiles a menacing smile as his cold, dead eyes stay fixed on you. Jesus Christ, you say as you turn away from those icy blue eyes, void of human warmth. I really am sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry it had to be this way. I really wish Cole could have been better as a human with a heart. He wasn't, though. He had become just the thing he truly was, a heartless bastard. As a human with a heart, those disgusting and hateful words. Your mind takes you back to that night of the crime scene photos at the Hotchkiss cottage. All the gore, the lifeless, lacerated corpse of Cole Nixon, who have been covered in blood. You can't get rid of that particular haunting image that is clear and vivid in your mind. This image in itself is enough to fuel your nightmares at night till this day. That terrifying, hateful, repellent image of the gaping hole that had been void of life, where a human heart should have been. Thank you for spending your day with me, my dark minions. You all have a special place in my cold, dead heart. If you've enjoyed this tale, make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube, and do leave me a comment below. If you would like to reach out to me, you can find me on platforms such as Facebook and Twitter. I'm Lady of Darkness on both platforms. Thank you once again for taking time out of your day and spending it with me. Till next time, sweet dreams.